Hey everybody, welcome to the webinar. My name is Tony Dahlager. I'm the VP of Account Management at Analytics 8. Super excited to be having a conversation today with Ryan Janssen from Zenlytic as well. We're going to talk about Agentic AI and its impact on data analytics and the industry as a whole. So Ryan, I'd love for you to just take a minute to introduce yourself and tell folks why you're excited about this topic and maybe why you're I don't know if you call yourself an authority. I would call you an authority, but curious just to hear a little bit on your background and why you're excited to be here today.
Yeah, I don't know if I deserve to be called an authority or not, but I'm definitely an enthusiast. I really believe in the
Enthusiast,
power
perfect.
of this tech. Yes, so my background is that I am kind of like an engineer and an entrepreneur, and I used to be a venture capitalist. So I've kind of touched all parts of the tech ecosystem. And I first got involved in what I'm doing now, which is I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Zenlytic uh, about 5 years ago. And I was just sort of like preparing our next venture fund as a VC. And I was researching, at the time, it was called a big data fund. And it goes by many names, but now it's called AI. But and in doing the research for that, it was so apparent, how fast the technology was changing. Even 5 years ago, it was moving very quickly. And even more so, it seemed like the pace of acceleration was increasing. It was just kept speeding up and speeding up and speeding up. And shockingly, that's true through to this day. In fact, it feels like it's still accelerating. But 5 years ago, I was doing the research for that, and I said, "Wow, this stuff that's happening in AI is going to be really, really big. I am too excited in this to just be an investor. I really have to participate." And so to do that, I went back to school. I went back and got a master's degree in machine learning, which is about as close as I get to authority. That's where my co-founder Paul and I met, and we started Zenlytic from there. And what Zenlytic does today uh, is that we make an AI data analyst. It's the data analyst is called Zoe. It's actually like a business intelligence platform, but the main point is that there's this analyst that's sort of always on, sitting there, ready and waiting for your analytics requests, so that it lets you really talk to your data. And the goal is to give everyone that sort of fast, easy, effortless access to data, so they can just do their jobs better and be a lot smarter.
Yeah, that's awesome. Before we jump into the, because I'm excited to see the product, excited to get a demo and have people see kind of hands-on everything. I'd love to zoom out a little bit too, because I think we've branded this webinar Agentic AI. It has certainly captured the marketing sphere hype, for at least from the last, I don't know, 6 months or so. I think we really noticed it. And there's some big promises, right? Like you can see random news clipping articles, the CEO of Microsoft saying it's the end of SaaS, or like any random Y Combinator startups talking about how their agents are going to replace 500,000 jobs over the next 10 years, which gets people like half excited and half terrified. So again, I'd like to just zoom out and think and hear your perspective as an enthusiast, right? Like how you think about agentic AI, whether or not you are seeing it as another trend, if it's reality, if you're optimistic, pessimistic, just kind of hear, zoom out from the data analytics space on agentic AI, and more on sentiments generally.
Yes. Well, the short answer is I'm actually a believer in it. But first you have to say, what is agentic AI, right? And
Yes.
like, it's become so red hot that people are just slapping it on everything and are using it everywhere. And it's an AI architecture. It's a marketing term for sure. It's a user interface pattern. There's all these things that people do, and that they call it an agent basically. It's a very vague generic term. The way that I like to think about what an agent is, it's from the AI, engineer perspective. And that's essentially it's like a thermostat. Think of it like a thermostat is the best analogy. Um, now what do I mean by that? Like uh, imagine if you had a friend who is a super genius. They know everything. They've read every single book in the entire world. You can ask them, about anything, and they can come back with an answer in seconds. Uh, but there's a catch. That friend has terrible amnesia. They can't remember anything that happened in the conversation previously. Like anything before that second. It's like the first time they're experiencing anything. Uh, and that's actually what's happening with a typical chatbot right now, which is crazy. They don't hold state, as an engineer says, right? So like they don't actually hold something inside. And there's lots of clever tricks to kind of like fool that and like make it look like they have memories and things like that. But the fact is like, when you have a conversation, imagine again, you do a follow-up question with that super genius friend, and you ask them about a book, and they give you a sentence, and you ask a follow-up question. What you're actually doing in that situation with a chatbot is you're telling your super genius friend, "Hey, listen, we just had a conversation. Here's what I said. Here's what you said. Now here's my new question. Can you follow up on that?" And we kind of make it look like that, chatbot is learning and participating in a conversation, but that is a brand new question for that chatbot every single time it wakes up, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, like, okay, here's what I said before. I guess that makes sense. That's what I said. Now here's how I react to that. That's the first generation of AI models. That's a chatbot. An agent is essentially something that takes that, some of those memories or some of that state, and it sticks it alongside the chatbot so that it can actually have that sort of continuous behavior. And the reason I say like a thermostat is it's kind of like, the thermostat, the number that lives outside of that is like a single number. It's like, here's the temperature that I want it at, like make it 72. And then, when the chatbot is still waking up every time, but when it does that and it sees the 72 and it's like, okay, making it 72. And it kind of, goes back to that goal. And that's the big difference between, chatbots and agents is that the agents have, goal-seeking capabilities. You tell them to do something, and it says, okay, I'm going to try and do this, and it evaluates. All right, is that goal solved? No. If not, I go back and I iterate and I change and I correct things. So that's the big difference. It's especially important today, in fact, on the eve of the launch of two really major new models, right? One of them is, Anthropic's Sonnet 3.7 model. The second is, I don't know if y'all saw, GPT 4.5 was released last night. And GPT 4.5 is actually, you're going to see some backlash for that, I think. People are kind of disenfranchised with it. And GPT 4.5 is probably the last really big non-reasoning model. And you could say if you look at some of the newer models, they reason. Those are essentially agent models, right? And they actually do that little thermostat process under the hood. Whereas 4.5 is a really, really monster, gigantic LLM, but it doesn't use reasoning. And people are saying, oh, this thing isn't as smart as the other ones that have come before it, these reasoning models. So I think, and actually, Sam Altman has said this before, that's probably the last of these models that doesn't use an agentic paradigm. So that's why I say I'm bullish on it. It's like the models are moving this way, the technology is moving this way, and it really is the best sort of paradigm for producing results.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, like the extent of what I've seen in the news or on social media or in the wild is like we're at the point where it can make a reservation for you, or which again I think is a broad generalization, right? But that's kind of the focus point of like, look, you can just say I want to plan an evening and have it go do all the things. I think for me, sometimes I think it's hard, and I know my peers as well. It's hard for us to kind of connect that to my day to day at work and like what are the things that I'm responsible for, and how's this actually going to help me in my current job and my current role, or even for trying to be able to enable other functions of the business to be able to have capabilities and not just like whatever I can think up and dream up. So, and again, like you kind of mentioned the big data curve, which is a fun synonym here. Just if we think about it, or corollary, if you think about it from that, like we kind of played this fun game where just Google any data AI vendor you want and just slap Agentic AI in there and you'll get the web page, like you'll get the marketing page up of like, we are Agentic AI. I won't name them just for fun because you can try that with your friends tonight at dinner. But I
I
think
think
when
we
we
do
zoom
that.
into the data analytics space, my question really is, do you think that what you see in terms of the capabilities today, and just acknowledging, right, there's two new models being released literally in the next in the last 48 hours. How do you see it in terms of being complementary to what exists today in the workflows for data and analytics versus what do you see as being totally disruptive? Like, I don't know where on that paradigm you would kind of fall in terms of how it fits in data analytics specifically.
Yeah, great question. So I mean, there's two things there. The first is where we're at now, and the second is where are we headed.
Yeah.
So where we're at now, I just want to qualify first by saying that we're in the top of the first for this stuff, and there's a ton more that we can do. LLMs are really really good at dealing with text. Like that's what they're masters of, and you can make it write a poem in this form of like you're a pirate or something like that, and it handles that instantaneously. But where LLMs are actually not natively great at is with structured data. And you have to do a lot of engineering and a lot of sort of ingenuity to connect this really stochastic kind of like, unstructured LLM to a structured data warehouse. So Where it's at now, we're early innings for it.
Yeah.
Having said that, even those early innings are really useful. And uh, the way that we see people using it is generally as a complement to existing tools, I would say. So like it's not the kind of, I guess every new like analytics paradigm or data consumption tool likes to go on and say, oh, dashboards are dead, and like that's the famous line, dashboards are dead, dashboards are dead. I don't think dashboards are dead. I think dashboards have a really good, time and a place and a use. And if you want to get a quick update on something and like, it's like you want to, do a quick scan and over your morning coffee, like there's a good user story there, and like I think, dashboards endure because dashboards are useful. So I don't see this completely replacing all of the usual sort of the consumption patterns we have for data. What I do see happening and we see happening with our customers, and I think is just going to keep increasingly happening in the long run, is that this provides a much more intuitive way to access data, and it's sort of like a fatter pipe to access data. And so like in the near term, that means that we see people, shifting and just sort of having ad hoc questions, right where they need them and when they need them. So, I use, for example, I use Zenlytic when I prepare our board presentations. And of course, we have a pretty good internal Zenlytic that has all of our, performance data in there. And when I'm preparing the board presentation, my workflow now is I literally have Zoe open on one screen, and then I have my board deck on the other screen, and I'm sitting there writing stuff, and then I pop over and I say, okay, Zoe, listen, I need I need a graph of our sales conversion funnel, over the last quarter, put it in Zenlytic colors, whatever, and I want it in the board deck, and I'm snipping those back into our
Yeah.
board deck. Uh, that's where we're at now, and it's like, so it's just fast and easy. And I think where we're going is increasingly uh, answering the questions that others can't,
Mm.
other tools can't, and that's where this becomes really, really valuable. Um, one of our customers, I don't know if his name names, is a major Fortune 500 brand. And I was talking with their CTO when they signed on, and they said, uh, I was speaking, I said, why did you choose Zenlytic? And their response to me was actually really surprising. They said, Ryan, we didn't buy you because we want to know our sales last week.
Yeah.
I've got a dozen tools that can tell me our sales last week. We bought you because you can use an AI agent to answer questions that other tools can't. And that's, they give me an example of, well, they give me several examples, but like, one example was, uh, they have a complicated sort of like, like delivery resolution process where their vendors send them shipments that didn't arrive. And they say, okay, listen, these, these three things didn't arrive, and they have to go back and trace, were they sent, and was this, a vendor error? Was this external cause? Was there weather cause? Did the carrier lose these? And chasing those things down takes a person a couple of weeks, even though all the data is available. And now they've replaced it, so they actually take that email from the vendor and they drag it into Zoe, and Zoe has a workflow that handles that instantaneously. And that's the kind of thing that you can't do just using a dashboard. It requires a whole bunch of judgment and intervention. And the really powerful thing is when those two things come together.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is a common objection that we hear especially in the last 2 years, and really when generative AI kind of bubbled up. Maybe it's 3 years now, but time's going quickly. But thinking about people's trust in those models, because they can see, hey, I can go down this pathway with what I use in whatever, name your favorite generative AI tool that you have on your desktop, and it can get pretty far ways down the road on general public knowledge and information. But I think everybody kind of acknowledges that internal systems, processes, even the language we use is so different from organization to organization that it requires like a level of contextualization or mapping these concepts to what normal, we would talk about normally. We call it something totally different here, and there's no way for you to know those two things. You have to give so much context to get to a place where you can say, hey, we can actually use this, or even the next step, which is we can trust this. So I'm
Mhm.
curious kind of how you think about, uh, you know, either the strategy, the approach that you guys have, or the way that you think about it in a way that uh, you feel confident that people can trust effectively using a tool like this. versus other approaches that maybe are less trustworthy because they lack that context, I guess. Like, how do you view
Yeah,
that?
great question. And this is sort of the core of this determines the main approach that you would use in a data tool like this. Uh, one of the ways that we're different is we use this approach called text to semantic layer. And the more common and the easier way to do this is called text to SQL. Uh, and let's go back to our super intelligent friend again for an example.
By the way, I
Um,
feel like you're actually describing one of my friends, so I'm trying to not like I'm laughing and smiling because I'm like, that's actually my wife might say that's her experience with me. Not super intelligent, but like the forgetting our last four conversations piece. And yeah,
yeah,
anyway, sorry, I'm
yeah, that's
interrupting. Go
right.
ahead. That's why I keep
Yeah, that's
smiling.
right.
I'm like, ah, this is funny.
Uh, that's so funny. Yeah, yeah. My wife would say the same thing about me too, and yeah, that's probably why she's better at prompting,
Just the
LLMs than
forgetting
I am.
part, not
Yeah,
the
that's
super
right.
intelligence.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, I'm the bottom left quadrant in that, like, um, but no, so like the other thing that your super intelligent friend doesn't know is stuff that's not public information. They've read every book out there, but if you work for Walmart, like, and they don't work for Walmart, like, they don't know anything about how Walmart does its business, right? And
Mhm.
like, and that's a feature, not a bug. That's exactly why people are like, oh, there's, like, how do you handle privacy and stuff with these LLMs? But the fact that they don't know that is actually a sign that, there's a way to handle privacy. Uh, but if you worked in Walmart, and you have some sort of Walmart proprietary, acronym, the Walmart Sales Index, the WSI, I don't know, and you go to your friend and you ask them for the third page of Mice and Men, and they can go and quote it. That's fine, but then you can say, what's Walmart's WSI last week? And of course, even, no matter how intelligent that friend is, they would have no idea, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why data is so hard is because it's people assume that they should know that even though the LM has been given no context, right? Uh, Now back to text to SQL versus text to semantic layer. That's one of the values of this, what the semantic layer provides is that it's this, you can think of this like a semantic layer like a semantic layer like you'd use with LookML or DBT metrics or any of the sort of popular semantic layer tools. Uh, that not only provides structure, it also provides really important context for an LLM to understand the business. So when you make a question in Zenlytic and you ask, hey, what was our WSI or whatever, if Walmart's not a customer, but if what's our WSI? It has the power to go and look up inside your data model and say, oh, here, listen, our WSI is this definition. Here's how we calculate it. Here's the gotchas. Here's what we should not include in this definition. And everything is sort of captured there, so it can answer the questions, consistently and accurately. There's two different things. Consistency is important, that it always uses the same definition of WSI everywhere. The easier version of this is called text to SQL, and that's like you ask it to sort of make a guess on what each of those revenue metrics is, and that can fail catastrophically if it doesn't have a clue what WSI is, and it says, I don't know, it can't do anything. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is it fails quietly, and it says, you can say, hey, listen, give me my revenues for last week, and the Ellen's probably smart enough to infer, okay, revenues is the sum of some sales column, but as you know, revenues is almost never like simply the sum of that sales column. There's also a few things filtered out. And it's like we don't count our China revenues inside of this revenue column. And
Mhm.
if there's a city that says Firefox tests, like that doesn't count towards our revenues. And knowing to exclude those, is the hard part. And a text to SQL LLM will actually sort of take a guess at that, but they won't know all those little idiosyncrasies, right?
Yeah,
And it'll get it quietly wrong. Your revenues will be off by 10% or something, and
yeah,
that's actually worse than it not being able to do anything at all.
yeah,
So the
yeah.
context is super important,
One of
and
the
it's
things
for
that I really like uh, about Zenlytic specifically, because I do think you all are thinking about this differently than what I've seen from other folks. And I noticed this. It's almost like when I started consulting, it was a big deal to be cloud native. You had a competitive advantage of being a cloud native tool. In many ways, I think because you all are LLM native, I don't know if you'd even call it that, but there's something about the fact that you're bootstrapping what Zenlytic does know on day one, the amount of effort it takes to get to that place of because again, it's balancing the guardrails, but also having a competency where you don't have to be able to predetermine every sort of question before from a configuration perspective. Like one of the things I love, we were on a demo with you all with one of our customers, and I laughed because your seller basically said like put this in the branding of this company on the demo site, and I was like, this is so risky because I don't like how you don't know what it's going to come back with, right? It actually was interesting because it could have had two very different answers, and it picked the right one, which was very impressive, right? But it's like you don't have to have every configuration defined, which is I think been some of the hurdles that we've seen in the past with some of these approaches. It's like when you didn't have an LLM to bootstrap you, you had to do so much work to get to a place where it was just competent to answer
Mhm.
basic questions. But you want to balance that, like you're saying, and not over uh, opening it up so much where the user of your product's not clear on where it's using your data versus where I'm augmenting that with public information versus where I'm saying I'm totally speculating here, but here's how I think we might answer this given the context you've given me, right? Which I really appreciate. I think that's really helpful, and it certainly helped us implement way faster than I thought we would when we use it internally. So it's very cool.
Uh,
I don't. Um,
you
yeah,
know,
I think
and
that's surprising to people of like there's still public information like that, like color schemes
mhm.
that, yeah, it's like it can be awkward if you pick the wrong one, but it's not fundamentally producing the wrong insights. But does improve the user process or the user experience, I guess, in terms of how you interact with it.
Yeah.
Um,
It is fun in demos though to just hand that over to an LLM, and it's like you've got another person in that call. The LLM is like making calls, and you're like, all right, yeah, do this please. And of course the tech isn't perfect, but it performs very, very well. And but every time you still kind of like, okay, is
yeah,
that gonna get the colors right? And you're like, okay, that's amazing. So it's the demos are a constant source of joy for me and inspiration because it's just cool to see all these neat capabilities emerging, even live as we use it.
that's an expression of your risk profile, I think, in enjoying that. That's not everybody feels that way.
Yeah, well,
The last question I'll ask, because I do want to show kind of what's real today versus what, there's a lot of presentations you get slideware on and YouTubes of all the cool stuff that is going to be disruptive, but I want to make sure you can show like what's possible today with your solution, your product. The other common objection we get from companies is just that their data is not in a state that is, uh, I guess, ready to be able to use this. And while I think that's totally fair, I'm curious how you think about like what a minimum viable state of data quality or of a use case would be to be able to get started with Zenlytic specifically, with your tool specifically, because that's a huge barrier of I can build BI reports and I get wrong answers out of our data. So why am I going to trust this instead, right?
yeah, 100%. I mean, we get this question together a lot. We always get this question. So the very first thing is I would say, uh, uh, talk to an expert first. An expert can assess that. So like,
Yeah,
they should talk with you, and I'm sure Analytics 8 will have a great sense of showing, hey, is this AI ready or not? And together we can actually do it, have a quick look and just say, all right, listen, you're ready for this, you're not ready for this. Here's what you need to do. Just sort of a
yeah,
quick AI readiness. We're always happy to help people out with that.
yeah,
Um, Now that's your question. Uh, the hardest of hard requirements is you have to have the data in a place. You have to have a bucket for it, and that looks like a data warehouse basically. So like
yep,
if you don't have a warehouse set up yet, I wouldn't bother with an AI specialist tool at this point. So like that's sort of like the hard requirement, right?
yes,
Assuming that's the case, it's like what does it take to make this data AI ready? And uh, it's the bar is lower than you think. Your data does not need to be perfect, for sure. And we're building this tool, and everyone builds these tools under the assumption that the data is not perfect because it never is. Uh, in some ways, it's actually easier to deploy with AI because the AI can work with a more raw form of data than a BI dashboard can. And I'll give you an example. What I mean by that is that if you're setting up a bunch of BI dashboards in Tableau, for instance, uh, the first thing you're going to do is take that underlying data and you're going to cube it, right? You're going to have some sort of intermediate kind of aggregate step in the warehouse, and
hmm
then you're going to put those in the dashboards. You have to make sure the calculation basis for all those various cubes for the various dashboards is consistent. Uh, you'd actually don't need to do that with an AI solution because you can just connect right to that base table that actually has the, the low level data and let the AI handle the calculation basis on top of that. That's one of the nice things about this approach. Um, so if you have uh, if you have problems in your data, uh, you can correct a lot of those at deployment time. So the same way that, if we go back to the super intelligent friend, that this, you have to say, listen, somewhere in your data warehouse, I guarantee this, there's like a phone number that says like Alex in it or something. Every single data warehouse has that, like, or like I said, like, every data team knows like these little gotchas, right? And like there's 150 sales in your orders items table that the city name is like Firefox test do not use or something like that. Uh, so if those sort of like known things that you correct for are actually really easy to correct with AI. That means you could actually just specify that inside a semantic layer. You can say, hey, listen, like uh, let's let's filter out all these cities with Firefox test in them and just don't count that. And you can count that at the very, very top of it. You can just give instructions like don't use this city equals Firefox equals test. And then you can solve that. So you can catch a lot of those errors at runtime, basically.
Yeah.
Um, I'd say interestingly, the approach that I recommend 100,000% of the time in these situations is to deploy and start small
Yeah.
and then iterate, and that's true in the best of times. We should actually take a second to talk about that and after this. But as it pertains to messy data, one thing that we have noticed is that when you use a tool like Zenlytic, you get a higher resolution view of the data, and
Yeah.
like so you go from seeing these usually your end users see an aggregated dashboard of and it just shows you, like a line chart with like, a highly aggregated number. And that dashboard probably has a bunch of data issues in that as well. They kind of average out over the aggregate, but nobody can really see them because they don't really have a good resolution view of the data. Once you deploy AI tools, people actually get the ability to drill a lot more easily and sort of pivot and, shape and navigate that data. You start to notice where the shortcomings are. And people will be like, oh, hey, listen, I noticed, in this table that like we're double counting our inventory. We should fix this. And that's it's a good thing, because you can identify the issues and you iron them out. But that just means that if you're worried about data quality, just start on certain deployments.
Yeah.
Test it out, get release it to the users, and see if anything that in their usage, you're going to learn how they're using the platform a lot better. Now, let's put a pin in that as well, actually. But you learn how they're using the platform. And then you can iron those issues out. And as you expand, you're improving the data quality as you go, thanks to that higher resolution view. It's sort of like
Yeah.
that which is measured can be managed.
Yeah. Yeah. And we did that. I mean, just for context for us too, we started with one table and we even excluded a bunch of the columns that were in that table because I knew that
Mhm.
there was some shenanigans
Yeah.
in in the data. And it was, I don't know, it was something like 10 or 11 fields. It wasn't a ton of data, but
Mhm.
it was a the other benefit of deploying for us was also getting people used to interacting with an agent too.
Yeah.
Because
Definitely.
how it's almost like retraining people to stop talking to agents like robots and talk to it like a data analyst. Which is it's kind of funny training because you're like, okay, so the training is don't do anything weird. Just talk normally to the
Yeah.
agent, like explain your question.
You know that
Um,
movie, the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix? It's like it's okay. It's an important movie to
Somebody
watch
does.
right now.
Go
Yeah.
pretend that I do. Yes.
It's a movie about like when this is all happening. It's about 10 years old now, and it's like they invented these OSs, and he actually falls in love with an OS. But the first day he's using it, his super intelligent assistant is like, "Oh, hey, listen, by the way, I noticed you got a few emails that are happening too." And he goes like, "Read email." And the agent makes fun of him, is like, "Okay, I am reading email now." And he's like, "Sorry, I forgot I have to talk to you like a human." So yeah, it's very true. People are actually really surprised by the sort of prompts that you make to this thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, it's very intelligent.
Yeah, the other
Overall, just
benefit too is I think because you have the semantic layer, you can control that too. That's the other thing that's really helpful.
yeah,
The
yeah,
text to semantic piece is implicit that you have a semantic model
yeah,
as a requirement as well.
yeah, that's
Um,
right. Which
yeah.
is essential. Like, even like, you can't drop a really smart human into a data warehouse without a semantic model and expect them to get accurate results. So like,
Yeah.
of course you have to get it to an AI.
Yeah.
The other
Awesome.
thing,
I
by
think
the
that's
way,
a
on
super good transition point because I want to make sure you get a chance to show because we're getting some questions too of like, how does this work? And even
yeah,
in terms of how you would configure, like how much effort is to configure all that stuff. And I think
yes,
to me, it's like, let's just show where you guys are at right now. And I think that will trigger a lot of other questions. So while you're pulling that up, Ryan,
yes.
because uh, again, we've already heard Ryan has a high risk profile. So if you want to, as he's going through the demo, you want to ask Zoe a question in Zenlytic, you can throw it in the chat. And
Let's do it.
no promise that
Um,
we won't filter on this side if it's something crazy, but
yeah, that's right.
um,
For sure. And let me just make two quick things before I jump into this.
yes,
I got my finger on the button. First thing is that feedback is super awesome when you have an AI. That's feedback
yeah,
loop of improving the data, because you have intent level questions. you
yes,
know? And when you give someone a Tableau dashboard and it shows their sales and they're like, okay, that's cool, yeah, that's neat. You don't know where they want to go from there.
yeah,
But interestingly, this is a great example of like if people come in and ask, in the live demo, it's like, hey, can we show me inventory? And it's like, oh, we don't have inventory in this particular, demo data set. If that was the real world, it's like, oh, people are asking for inventory in the chatbot. Like we need to know
yes,
that this is an important set of data. Oh, people want to be able to slice sales, by product line. And like, let's make sure that that is captured in the data.
yes.
So it gives you
You can
intent
see the chat
level.
history from
Yeah,
others
yeah.
as
So
we
like
even to
that's right.
see here's what kinds of people are asking, or here's their reaction to these responses. Yeah,
Yes, that's right. So optionally, you can actually also have designate someone to be an admin that can read the chats and see the chats that have been asked, of Zoe about the company's data.
yeah,
And that gives you just a much more rich information. It's kind of like what Google does with intent-based search. And it's like for the first time ever, you have keyword search basically. So let me share my
super
screen
cool.
here.
And one of the questions we have is, would this tool replace Power BI or add a AI layer to it? We can talk through what's similar um, versus different than Power BI. But let's go through the demo first, Remy. That's good to just give some context.
Sure. Yeah. Now, and we have another question there. Can people see, how do they validate the data being accessed by the
Yeah,
tool? Can they see the idea? Oh, yeah, we'll jump into that as well.
sweet.
So, we're gonna skip a bunch of the business intelligence stuff like the dashboards and the data model editor. I mean, y'all have seen what a point or like the what a point and click explore GUI looks like, for instance, and you're actually just building up, these sort of queries and things like that. You can see, the semantic layer here is actually building up measures, dimensions, things like that.
Yeah.
Uh, we're gonna skip all that. We're just gonna jump right into chat here. Um, Now, for fun, I'm actually we speaking of risk profile, we talked about one of these brand new models that came out 2 days ago. This is Claude Sonnet 3.7. We're actually going to use Claude for this. We use a variety of different underlying models. Most commonly the GPT models, but let's have some fun with Claude here. This has only been in the product for about 6 hours, and it is the beta. So here we are in risk profile mode. But let's just ask a basic question first. Something like. Uh, let's use the voice for it. Hey Zoe, hey, can you show me my revenues year to date, and can you compare that to the same time period last year? And I'd like you to break that out by product type, please. Our usage is probably about 50-50 between text and voice. The voice feels really, really cool, feels really natural, but you can see the query there. Revenues year to date, same time period last year. These are all things that I'm trying to picture a question that you could probably do with a lot of point and clicking. Maybe you might take a little bit of SQL writing, but it becomes sort of effortless when you could it's the sort of thing you can express easily in language, but it's actually pretty hard to express in SQL or in some sort of, BI GUI. So what's happening here is that Zoe is explaining, her plan. So this is the agent in action. You can see, all right, so like here's the first thing, identify what I need. Year-to-date revenues, restate the problem. She's going to search for the fields. Let's see here. She's going to search for these inside your data model. So for instance, I'll open one of these. She's searching for revenue and product type. It's like, all right, so here's the sort of relevant fields that you have inside your data model, their description, things like that. She makes an assessment on which ones to use. She plans her approach for answering the question. And she's going to say, all right, yeah, I've got it. We found total gross revenue by product type. We found this January 1st, 2025 to Feb 28th, 2025 compared to the same time period in 2024. And here we go. Um, And we can see here's our product types. This is, by the way, this is a fake data set. It's for it's an e-commerce store that sells, skincare and skincare accessories, basically, named
Pure
Pure
organics.
Organics. Pure Organics. And we can see here, all right, so here's our revenue broken out by, product type, face, eye, cheek, lip. And she gives us a little summary. This is actually the reason I'm choosing the Sonnet model is because Sonnet is actually really good at performing these summaries, so it can tell us a little more. Face products are your top revenue generator, 8.8 million to date, up from 6.6 in the last year. Let's see, face and eye, strongest revenue drivers, collectively accounting for 85% total revenue. Interesting. Okay, cool. So, goes a little bit above and beyond and says we'd like to drill in any specific, any aspect of this in more detail. So cool. All right, we asked a difficult question. Now I'm gonna also I don't actually have a chat window open, so I'll please just throw questions in there as we're going, and Tony, maybe you can read those out if they pop up.
Yep.
I'm gonna address the one that was asked earlier, which is like, how do we know what the underlying data is? Uh, this is one of the neat things about using a semantic layer is that it becomes auditable, right? So if we were to just be using text to SQL and have an LLM sort of writing SQL for us, you'd probably just see, this, right? And it would say, okay, here's the query I wrote. Here's the data. Does that make sense to you? Right? It's like, is this what you want? And unless you are pretty good at SQL, and you have time to sit here and read this thing, this is an easy one. These can be thousands of lines of SQL. It's really, really difficult to audit what the model's doing.
Yeah.
Now, in the semantic layer approach, the LLM doesn't write a single line of SQL. The LLM only prepares, this sort of set of parameters. And it says, all right, listen, I want to have total gross revenue. I want to have it sliced by product type. I want to have it over these time periods. And that is what goes into what we call our cognitive layer that sort of compiles that into a SQL statement. And then, that delivers this. So that has several benefits. First, it's completely understandable, right? And the second thing is because you can audit it, you can say, all right, here's my revenue. Total gross revenue. How do we define that? Okay, oh, interesting. This is just like we have an order lines dot order column in our data model. Let's see. Yeah, we just take the sum of that revenue. This is like revenue from product sales and shipping revenue. Someone left a little note in here for me. I know what we're talking about. And that's the level of understandability that you really need to make this self-serve.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to go a step deeper and you are sort of an admin or a data person, yeah, of course you can drill into it. You can jump to the data model editor, open up the actual underlying configuration of this, and you could even jump into a preview of the data from here if you wanted to, right? But you can see we actually go right down to, row level observability is the goal. And then the neat thing is, yeah, you can iterate from there. So like, let's switch to typing. Cool. Okay, show me just face products. Just this year to date. No previous year. And make it a line chart daily. Whatever. Make that question. And again, so it lets you have that sort of conversation, with an analyst. You can iterate, or cool, all right, I'm going to create that now for you, blah, blah, blah. One of the downsides to the Claude 3.7 model is a little bit slower as a brand new model. So, we have to let her think for a little bit. But again, you can see this reasoning happening for the agent. Okay, this is a pretty simple request. Need January 1st for 28th. Let me run that query for you. Now she's actually getting the data from the warehouse. Now she's evaluating the data. Now she's saying, all right, let me make a line chart for you. And again, you can actually audit what's happening through these steps here. All right, thanks. Cool. Thanks. We got a partial period at the very end there. But other than that, yeah. All right, this is now we're looking at all of our face revenues. So we basically double clicked on, this right here. And we've drilled into this and sort of spread that out over our revenues, over the start of the year. Now, again, pause there. Do we have any questions on this, Tony?
Nope, no questions yet.
Okay, awesome.
And you can
So I
actually, we
thought,
found on our side, like we can actually copy and paste that SQL into our data warehouse. If we wanted to audit something, you can
yeah,
literally just copy and paste it if you wanted to.
yeah. So this is
Yep.
actually literally the SQL that's being run to get this
So
query.
which tables it's hitting and all that stuff behind the
Yeah,
scenes when you're more on the admin side.
yeah.
I also love
So
that you can
so
choose the model now. Our consultants will love that. They've been asking which model we're using. It's
that's
fun.
right. Yeah. For sure. And there's actually some really advanced models in here too. Some of the latest reasoning models are available, like GPT, o1 and things like that. Uh, now, now I went and I Martha Stewarted some of this, and I put some turkeys in the oven,
I love it.
before our call here. So we have to like watch all these results, but let's just see some of these ones that I did previously here. So like, this one's pretty neat. So I went to Zoe and I said, "Hey, could you make me a scatter?" And by the way, we're gonna look at some of the advanced analytics here. This is code interpreter. So this is what's gonna happen. What we're gonna see here is actually Zoe. You make a request that requires more than just SQL. So if you make an advanced request that you can't answer in SQL, Zoe will actually flip into writing Python code against that.
Yep.
And she'll still pull all of the data in a governed way using SQL. And then she'll take that governed data set and run Python against that for more advanced analytics.
Yep.
So, and that lets you do things like predictions and forward predictions and clustering and, even running little machine learning models on it and things like that if you wanted to. So, A/B testing, advanced use cases of analytics. So I said, "Hey, Zoe, make me a scatter plot of monthly sales versus the previous month's marketing spend. You know, make me a linear trend line, get rid of any outliers, and just give me numbers for like our average incremental revenue per dollar spent. And, I want you to forecast our sales next month for me." The implicit, it's implied there is like based on our current month's marketing spend. But, she understands what I'm talking about. She's okay, cool. Builds a plan. Interestingly, actually, she tried to query this data, collect monthly sales data, made a mistake here, and said, "Oh, right, I'm going to correct that. Something's not right in this sales data." She didn't bother showing it to us. You can go and trace the steps if you want, but she's like, "Something's not right here. I'm going to fix this query, and I'm going to send it back again." There we go. Got that. Got that. She's gone and pulled these things. Things like this is our monthly revenue data that she's going to pull for us. She went up here and pulled our monthly marketing spend data. Very cool. Then she takes that and she stitches it together using Python. And so this is actually a chart that was made in Matplotlib using Python. And what Zoe did is she plotted those two things against each other, did a regression, and did some analysis for me here. And like, all right, here our forecast sales, 5.6 million. Cool. So it's like this is showing that we have a bit of an upward slope, like not a huge upward slope, but spending more on marketing actually increases our revenue growth the next month. And let's see, it's like, all right, we have an ROI, which she kind of discusses how, strong the model is. It's a 2R squared. So she's like, she explains there's a positive relationship, but other factors significantly influence sales performance. So she provides a sort of measured, here's the caveats that, a person can understand, right? She found one outlier, March 2024, that she took out of the analysis. Here's our, average ROI on marketing spend. And our last month of February, 5.76. So like, yeah, she built a quick basic revenue forecast for us. Um, what else do we have on here? I just did a quick
Before
interview
I
one.
before you jump into the next one, because I
Oh,
think I think
yes.
everybody loves the visuals. Everybody loves the chat process. People are asking how the sausage is made because there's a healthy degree of skepticism on how much this is demo cooked in the Martha Stewart oven.
Oh,
So I think it'd be helpful just to show Ryan just briefly like what does the configuration process actually even look like in terms of connecting to your warehouse and maybe even defining some of those like basic table join relationships, those kinds of things. Like how do you actually prepare the tool for use against your warehouse
for sure.
as well.
Yeah, you got
If you
it.
had a thought
Well,
you want to finish, definitely do that. I know we're coming up against time. I want to make sure we have a little bit of the how the sausage is made.
okay, let's do two things here. I mean, first, if you want to make some sausages, let's get a query running, then we'll go into data my letter and talk more about that while the query's
Even
going.
better. Yeah.
We'll ask this we'll do one of those her style questions. This is the way that a lot of people actually sort of interact with Zoe too. Hey Zoe, listen, I'll be honest with you. It's my second week on the job here at Pure Organics as a marketing manager. I uh, I don't really know what we have for data or anything yet, but my boss told me we have some incremental marketing budget to spend, and I don't know where to allocate it. Can you help me figure this out? What I really want to know is like I'm looking for like a high efficiency channel. Can you maybe like go through our channels, figure out a high efficiency channel for me? Maybe take the best of those and find a campaign that I can allocate additional marketing budget to. And maybe just give me like a paragraph of summary at the end. Thanks very much. So we'll let her start on that. We'll let her chew on that for a while. And while we're at that, let's jump into the data model editor. I'll come back to this in a minute. Because I think Zoe's going to be thinking on that for a minute or two. This is how this is what's underlying the queries that we're asking here today. So it's a relatively simple model. Show all joins. I guess we can blow out all the fields, but let's just go to the main join fields. It's a handful of tables basically. We have a products table. Stop this from overlapping. We have a customers table. We have this marketing spend table, which is completely isolated. We have an events table, which is isolated, and this I don't even know what that is, so I'm just gonna put that over there. This is what's underlying our data today, and we're actually looking at the customers table now. And to set up and use Zenlytic, this is that sort of semantic layer we've been talking about. You'll jump into one of these tables and you'll define each of the columns. So if you look at the customers table, this is what the data preview looks like. We've got, I don't know, a dozen columns or so here. First, last city. Again, these are all just made up fake names, of course. We're not sharing PII on a webinar.
Be good. Thank you.
The first last did they accept our product marketing? There's a few features on them that have been built out. This is all that you need to make those queries happen. This is what the configuration looks like, and it's like, this customer, the first name is a dimension, for instance. It's a string. That's kind of all you have to know for this. And there's a couple of things in here, like you can add additional descriptions, things like that. When you're setting this up, the LLM will actually take a first draft at this for you. So when you add a new table, there's a little thing where you can say, ask the LLM to set this up, and it will create the first configuration. Now, that gets you 80% of the way there. There'll be certain things like that Walmart WSI that, a public LLM is not going to know what that is. So you have to go and say, oh, listen, here's how we calculate our WSI. And you can add that custom measure in, that defines it. But when you connect the table, 80% of this is sort of out of the box for you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yep. So
Now,
one of the good, maybe a good focus area, because I think this is kind of gets to the point. One of the questions was, how does the tool interpret data taxonomy? For example, when you're writing ARR, how do you know whether to use the closing date or the transaction date? How do you differentiate between perspectives of sales and finance teams? Just as like a real, in your guys' world too, that's a very real world question.
great question. So the way that we handle that is with the concept of a default date. So you can actually encode that into the semantic layer. So for example, if we look at subscription revenue here, no, our candidates here, this table itself has a default date. In our subscription revenues, our default date is order date. Cool. And you actually can specify, hey, listen, by default, we count our revenues by order date here. And that means that everything in this view, unless you override it, so like your revenues and total discounts, that will be by the date that it was ordered. You can go in and override any of these. First here, you can actually just go and set in a new date here if you want, and say, oh, order date. If there's a returns in here, return date, it should be done by return date instead of by order date. And that defines how the model should think about it. And you can always override the model as well. So it's a recommendation, not a requirement, and you can mix and match. So if you wanted to go in there and say, hey, listen, I want to have all of my revenue by return date, that's not something the model would usually infer by itself. But you can ask for that, and you can take out the default and put a new one in and be explicit with it. But what the default lets you do is not be explicit.
Yeah. And one of the things we found helpful too is explicitly writing in the description, sales and finance look at this metric two different ways. Make sure to clarify whether you want to see it from which perspective. And then you can even add additional context to say why they care about that. Again, it's the institutionalizing of the knowledge of your organization to create those sort of guardrail parameters. You still have the transparency, know how they answered the question. You can go back and look at the chat and see how they came up with the number, and see which date they were using. But that's like what the process of configuration is seeing how people ask the questions, making sure we're defining those business terms clearly. Like I kind of joke that like data catalogs are going to have their zombie moment in 2025 of like, oh no, or business glossaries specifically, right? Like all the semantic meaning and definition that we've been ignoring, and like, oh, we'll get that in the next sprint. It becomes incredibly important here.
Yeah, it's so funny because as an industry collectively, like we started using these descriptions as helpful hints for people. It's like, hey, if human understands this better if we say what total gross revenue is. But it turns out they're an excellent tool for providing context to an LLM. So it's like in the end, the machines are using these descriptions very effectively too. And Zoe will actually read this a description in and make a decision on what you're going to plot based on this. So you could actually say, hey, if we're asking about revenues from Canada here, don't use this one. You have to use revenues Canada table instead. And
Yeah.
Zoe will respect those rules. Speaking
Does
of which,
does Zenlytic have a preferred data warehousing, data modeling paradigm?
no, we're pretty agnostic. I would say any of the modern warehouses are best.
Just because of the
There's a few.
columnar, like the
Yeah, any
performance side
column
of it
data
more?
warehouse. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I would say a lot of our users are on Snowflake, BigQuery, things like Mother.Docker, really cool up and coming warehouse. Uh, and then we do get a long tail of the Redshifts and the Apache Druids, and we actually even have people using them on non-columnar database. We have MySQL users and
Yeah.
things like that, but those just don't perform as well. It's like it's when you're making columnar analytics type queries on it. I would not recommend an operational database. So you're right. Any sort of columnar database is the way to go.
Okay. I mentioned
And
this in the
but
chat. I know we're at the original scheduled time here. We're still going to hang out here and keep so you can keep the questions coming. We'll make sure to send the recording out after this as well, and we'll make sure to watch the video on YouTube to be able to respond to questions and comments you all have there as well if you're watching this after the fact. Just reinforce this too, Ryan, because again, the question was, what is the accuracy of the SQL generated? Just how specifically you know that the SQL is accurate.
yeah, that's a great question. That goes back to how we know it's accurate because we don't let the LLM generate it, basically. And LLMs are
Yeah,
not good enough to write 100% accurate SQL. They're very good, but like I wouldn't trust them to write all my SQL accurately. So no LLM
especially
actually
against
generates.
proprietary data. Like that's
Right.
the whole point is the institutional knowledge tells you where to look. I wrote a post about that a couple of weeks ago, just how our what you would think would be our source data about our manager relationships in our data warehouse is actually just about time approval. It has nothing to do with the reporting structure. And if you just point it at a warehouse and say, show me the hierarchy of manager relationships, you're going to see everybody reports to our admin, to our HR manager in our
That's
organization.
right.
Like that's
Yeah.
not correct. Because it's just
Exactly right,
it's
right?
the databases don't have enough context today. We haven't invested enough in the metadata to be able to have it know where to look.
That's right. Exactly. Let's make another instruction here. Yes, please dive deeper. Well, I answer that question. Uh, and that's exactly it. So like the SQL query that was written here, I guess it's a pretty basic query. Uh, this query, none of this was written by an LM. So this was actually compiled from a closed form SQL compiler. The same way that it's like a C compiler. It just follows the rules and it's like, hey, listen, we have these measures. These are the predefined joins.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a possibility for the LM to misinterpret something and choose the wrong inputs here. But for these inputs, ROAS and marketing channel, these dates, these filters, these time grains, for that set of inputs, it's 100% guaranteed that the SQL is correct for that set of inputs because we don't use an LLM for it. It's the same way that how do you know that the SQL is correct in that Looker dashboard? And it's like
Yep.
as long as it's been written properly in the configuration layer, the SQL will be correct. And by the way, our turkey question here, so this is that big long thing. Zoe went ahead and it's like, all right, let's identify some marketing channels. We'll figure out efficiency. We'll find the right campaign summaries. So she did the first half of it already. She's finished on the second half. She says, all right, well, listen, I'm going to look at events, order lines, marketing spend. Uh, it turns out ROAS, she thinks, is probably the best sort of way to, allocate it to some marketing spend. That sounds pretty good to me. Yeah. She goes and looks at our various channels. She says, all right, here's our top three. Looks like Facebook is the best with a 6.94 or 6.49 ROAS. If you'd like me to dive deeper in campaigns, I will. And I was like, yeah, please dive deeper. And now she's identified our two best Facebook campaigns. Looks like top sellers and organically you is the most efficient ROAS inside Facebook. There's other ones like, just didn't list them here, but like feeling fine, feeling yourself campaigns. There exist, but our efficiency data is not there. We shouldn't pay attention to that, so we shouldn't use it. So go back to your boss and say, hey, listen, let's just put some money into top sellers to start. So that's the sort of turkeys in the oven, basically.
Yes. I love it. One of the things that I just want to make sure you touch on briefly, because somebody did say how's security handled? They have more specific technical questions and asking like how can we have a one-on-one conversation? Very simply, Ryan and I both in the beginning of the chat, we posted our LinkedIn. Obviously, we can follow up through the webinar as well. We will follow up through the webinar. So we'll reach out to you if you're interested in talking one-on-one. Definitely happy to help set that up to be able to answer all you want to talk security, compliance, all that good stuff. Let's do that one-on-one. That's a good space. One of the things I think would be interesting though, we had a conversation together with a client where they were saying, this is great that you can have a day one person say, I'm day one, what should I be looking at? But if we want to create more of a structured path, again, institutionalizing the knowledge of the organization in like the intelligence, the organization, the best of our smartest person. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how you guys are thinking about workflows. It's kind of the next evolution of like the guardrail around even how to work through a problem, a business problem, or things like that. I think that would be a really fascinating way to kind of end the call to give people a little teaser on what's
Yeah,
here
for
and
sure.
what's next for you guys.
Well, that feature is in beta now, not announced yet, Tony. But
Oh no,
we're
gosh,
break. No, no,
sorry.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's fine. I'm more than happy to share with the audience. It's not. We're not hiding it.
We'll cut the
So we're
recordings out here.
yeah, that's right. Just bleep it out. Just cut to like that little beep. Yeah.
And this will be the last webinar we all do together. It was good. Sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
No, so this is something we're really excited about. So we're launching this. We're in beta now. We'll be in GA with this feature next month. It's you can actually use it. You'll have access to it if you want to use it now. We just haven't been promoting it on the website, and that's our new workflows feature. And this is driven by overwhelming demand from our customers. What it is it lets you specify a job to be done, and that can be uh, using the data inside your warehouse. It can be using additional things on the outside. It can be using you can throw a CSV in or PDFs or additional documents. The model will actually sort of guide you through this step-to-step process. So you'll actually say, hey, listen, a good example is maybe, let's say, the weekly business review. You've got a weekly business review. We do our WBRs. We've got a bunch of sales data in our, HubSpot table in our warehouse. Our chief revenue officer is old school, so he has a Google sheet that has our forecast tracker on it. And we have, a picture of the whiteboard that has all our pilots circled from our AEs basically because they're focused on whiteboards because they're a bunch of salespeople. You can take all those
I'm not going to
things
take
and
that personally. That's fine. Yeah.
yeah, AE is gonna whiteboard. But so, anyways, we now for I can click the run our WBR button, and it'll say, okay, listen, hey, listen, give me I pulled your data from the HubSpot. Listen, give me the latest PDF from your board update, please. I've already got the link to the Google Sheet, so we'll import a Google Sheet for that, and send me a picture of your whiteboard. uh, and it will actually go and you can follow a set of steps. So be like, listen, take all the HubSpot data, anywhere that data is missing in HubSpot, add the whiteboard image, whatever it is, and it'll compile that in through a set of instructions. So it's kind of like giving a recipe.
Yeah.
People are using it for operational use cases. The sort of vendor shipment resolution thing that I mentioned earlier is actually a workflow where you upload, the email from the vendor and you upload, the CSV that has all of the various like shipments and SKUs that are sort of being like questioned. And then it goes and actually, does that resolution. It actually appends more columns to the CSV where it's like, okay, here is your listen, is this our fault? Yes, no. If not, here's the cause. Here's what we should say. And it actually completes that CSV for you uh, per the recipe that the data team has given it before. So it's like, listen, here's how we should resolve these, like discussions with our vendor.
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever legal disclaimer you need to make, we'll put that out there for. I think one of the things I love about, because even just talking in hypotheticals, not things that are in beta, knowing where as a AI product, knowing where to establish those boundaries versus where to leave it very open to be flexible has to be a really hard dynamic for you to manage. I think just maybe as a last
Yeah.
final question, how do you think about that as you're thinking about the future of AI's role in the workplace and balancing the governance versus the autonomy and being able to be, truly an agent as opposed to just a chatbot?
Yeah, 100%. And this by the way is why it's essential to be an AI native tool. Because you have to think through these sort of things. And when you're a legacy, business intelligence platform or something, you you're focused on, making great dashboards, but you don't really have the architecture or the, internal ability to really focus on these sort of important questions. Where do I think that's going? I think that everyone's jobs are safe. Let me start off with that. I think that there will always be a person responsible for managing it. And you probably saw that, there's that famous IBM deck from 1979. It says something like
I need to see it though. That we need to
a
include that in
machine.
the webinar
Yeah, yeah, well, that's right.
follow-ups.
Yeah, that's right. We'll include the slide. It's like it says like a machine can never be held accountable for its decisions. Therefore, a machine must never make management decisions, basically. And it was true in 1979, and it's still true today, right? So the very fact that I don't think that AI is going to be running a business. People will be running businesses. People run businesses, AIs don't. So everyone's jobs are safe. What I think, and I think what that means for, how you design the guardrails for these tools is at the end, it's something that extends a human rather than fully replaces them, right?
Yeah,
And it's the kind of thing that, our goal with Zenlytic is to provide just like a really fat pipe of data to a domain expert and let someone who has that intuition and judgment, and whether that person is, a marketing manager, or whether that person is someone who does programmatic ad buying, or they do sales ops or whatever, an executive who looks at the business and they can see all these parts. If you give them that data to inform their intuition, inform their human instincts, that combination is stronger than any one of those two entities by themselves. You
yeah,
know, so like the way that I think about it is like you have to give the AI a fair bit of freedom to understand and sort of be creative. But at the end of the day, it always has to report to a human. It has to be governance mechanisms in place that make sure that what it gives you is human understandable and performing in the set of parameters that was given to you by a human as well.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for the time today. I kind of joke, being bald, you can just see my whole head turn red when I get embarrassed. So everybody at Analyst 8 got to enjoy that. I can't wait for the Slack memes to show up for the custom emojis later today. That's not asking for that. I just am saying I'm expecting that. But it was great to talk with you. Thanks to everybody who participated in the chat. Again, we'll watch the YouTube comments, and you can always reach out to us directly on LinkedIn, and we'll make sure to reach out to webinar registrants. So we want to engage with you. We want you to see what this looks like for your organization too. So, the best call to action we have here is like schedule a call. Let's talk about it. Let's show you what it could look like with your data. Because I think, again, the barrier of entry is a lot lower than you might think to get started. We got started in just a few days with Analytics 8, and we were up and running. So again, thank you, Ryan. Thank you to the Zenlytic team, and thank you to all our webinar participants. We'll catch you next time
Thanks,
with
Tony. Thanks
Analytics
y'all
8
for
and
watching.
Zenlytic. Bye, everybody.
Take care.